All right, looks like we're live, and I'm here with Matt Forney and Pastor Tom.
Wubba lubba dub dub.
Hello, everybody.
And hopefully this little brat dog here will shut up long enough for me to do this stream.
Hey, you invited me on.
So the two topics I wanted to cover first, and then we'll just go to little other stories we think of. But was Trump going after the NFL? And the big story, at least in nerd circles, is the YouTube channel Diversity in Comics. I've talked about them on here before. He runs a good YouTube channel. Same with Captain Cummings. They both cover the same topic, just how absolutely paused in an egg hole Marvel Comics has become, and to a lesser extent, the industry as a whole. Well, Diversity in Comics is sort of leading the charge. He's the biggest name out there criticizing this crap. And there was a I'm not sure if it was a Discord group or whatever, but there was these kind of chat logs got leaked with some comic professionals. Clay Moore, Isaac Goodhart, Kelly Thompson, Taylor Ipposito. I'm not really familiar with any of these people. But they're sitting there and they're talking about the New York Comic Con, and they're like, knowing Diversity in Comics is going to be there makes me wish I was going. The last thing Diversity in Comics is going to do is get violent in the con. But I'd love to follow him around and try and goad him into throwing a punch. And then somebody else, I'd love for you to yell one punch after you level him. This was a private Facebook group, apparently. When it was brought to people's attention somehow it got leaked. They tried to walk it back, saying they just want to talk to him. Good grief. Tell everyone to chill out. I was not goading Richard into a fight. Private forum stuff. Wade wants to talk to him, not arrest him. I assume they're referring to Mark Wade. I'm as annoyed about this as I was when whatever. They try to talk it back. Now, in all fairness, people do talk shit in private groups. That happens. I'm part of private groups too. Yeah, okay. But it's extremely telling that it's just overall telling of the type of personality these usually holier than thou fucking SJWs are. I mean, this is an old song by now. We've seen this movie play out several times before. And the idea that, and again, I'm assuming they're referring to Mark Wade. They didn't mention him as being part of the group, but that's the only Wade I could think of, unless I was missing something there. And I know Mark Wade is one of the more prominent writers that pushes a lot of SJW horse shit. He made Daredevil basically unreadable the last few years. The idea that Mark Wade just wants to talk to him. Like Mark Wade is going to go up to this guy at a private con. First of all, it's ridiculous, the idea that Diversity in Comics is apparently an ex-Marine and, a war veteran. So even if he let himself completely go after he got out of service, I highly doubt Mark Wade's going to go up and punch him. Mark Wade hasn't seen his dick since the Spice Girls were touring. All right? So, yeah, he's not going to go and flatten an ex-Marine. But again, it's just telling, it's completely telling where the industry is. And, once again, Marvel in particular, DC is guilty of some of this SJW shit, but it's not nearly to the extent Marvel is. DC at least tries to give the customers what they want, somewhat, right now. Marvel, on the other hand, not. They have this one arc called Generations, this series of one-shots, which were supposed to sort of pander to the people who are sick of all these SJW affirmative action hire replacements. And the story of these one-shots is there's some sort of time travel thing where these SJW replacements go back in time and meet the people they replaced, which is funny because in a lot of times they had. Sometimes those characters are still active. But the point is, it's basically this excuse to show off how, no, the new ones are actually even better. See, even the old characters are great. And they're sitting on the shelf. They're not selling. I can go to the local comic book stores in my area. They're just sitting on the racks, collecting dust. So when you look at the sales, which have not been that good, they're actually much worse because, as I've stressed on here numerous times, the Diamond sales figures are extremely misleading because they show you what comic stores have bought, not what they've sold. So
Kind of like the difference between shipped and sold.
yes, those figures do not do any kind of decent job of keeping track of what comic book stores actually sell. So if you see, dozens of copies of something on the shelf, that's registered with Diamond as dozens of copies already sold. And even with that, Marvel's numbers are shrinking and diminishing while DC's numbers rise. It's not hard. If you constantly spit in the face of your likely customers and refuse to give them what they want, well, you're going to end up with this sort of shit.
Well, comics can tell a story and they can have a message in them. I mean, they can be, I don't understand how comics can be apolitical per se, but there's a big difference between having a message that you're telling and just preaching at somebody. I mean, again, as a pastor, I don't want to be preached at unless I'm listening to a sermon. I don't want to be preached at if I'm reading a comic book or playing a game or whatever, no, and nobody really wants that.
Yeah. I mean, look, you could argue there's always been some left-wing bias in comics. But there's a difference between, left-wing years ago and SJW. I mean, you can certainly argue that, one begat the other. Point is, they are considerably different things. And yeah, very few people get mad at like old style, the old style storytelling and that kind of thing. But this, and again, SJWs are just never good at what they do. And this stuff is just all bad. That's the really telling, very few people are mad that Jane Foster, for example, took over the role of Thor. It's just that comic book is now gender studies, the fucking comic book. And oh, shit. Sorry, the dog tripped over himself there. But yeah, it's gender studies, the comic book, and nobody wants to read that. Yeah, you could, like Civil War back in the mid 2000s is a good example of, that was in many regards it was kind of a critique of the Bush era, kind of, Patriot Act shit, but it wasn't, first of all, directly about that, and second of all, it was actually a pretty decent read. But yeah, the quality of Marvel Comics these last few years has been horrendously bad, just absolutely horrendously bad. And, the stubbornness of the people working at Marvel Comics is astounding. I mean, SJWs always double down time and time again. They refuse to even acknowledge the low sales, which, they'll play the games of how, they are technically selling more comic books than DC because they're actually producing more comic books. They're selling actually more titles, so it's kind of, they're literally comparing the sales of 10 books versus the sales of one book to try and say they're outselling DC, when pound for pound, they're very much not. Then they'll play games like that. They refuse to acknowledge the problem with the fact that, again, Diamond does not keep track well of what is actually sold so much as what the stores order. And they refuse to admit the fact that the ship is sinking. They are the epitome of the everything is fine dog meme. And then again, to just sit here and see, to to just sit here and see this private group, and it's blown up. I mean, people that don't really care about comics that much are covering it because, it's just another Gamergate type story. It's another indefensible thing.
I don't know. I don't get, what is it that diversity in comics is saying that is so bad that you feel like you have to go and maybe want to beat the guy up?
I mean, yeah, even like a few weeks ago when, we all wanted to get all upset about, the poor Heather Antos, she got all this harassment on Twitter. The worst thing anyone said to her was would bang or something like that. I mean, big deal, sweetie. You got some mildly salty comments. Oops. I mean, again, big deal. There used to be a lot more professionalism in the comic book industry. There really was. Now, I mean, there's always been pettiness. It's been problems. There's always going to be problems. But I think back to even 20 years ago and all, not a lot of people feud it. And if they did, that shit was kept on the DL. Now, it was easier in pre-internet days, but still. It was a very small industry. You had to be professional. You had to bite your tongue a lot more. You didn't criticize other creators. You didn't criticize work. That's all gone now. This industry lacks any adults in the room at this point. The reason that picture of Heather Antos and the rest of the girls working at Marvel went viral in a negative way so quickly is because it just was so indicative of what's wrong with Marvel. I mean, it's a bunch of 13-year-old girls running the show. I mean, it would be bad enough if it was a bunch of 13-year-old boys running the show. But especially when you got a bunch of, I mean, these girls couldn't be more than in their, mid-20s. And they're editors at Marvel. And by the way, never mind the job of editing, of keeping the creative direction and continuity in check that editors at Marvel and DC have to do. They're actually bad at their job of basic editing. These books are filled with typos and grammatical errors and things like that editors are supposed to catch from writers. They're not doing their job. Yeah, the whole thing has just been a mess. And again, diversity in comics has done nothing more than just point this shit out. Look at this book. It's ass. It doesn't sell. Everyone, and he'll point out good Marvel books. He's praised Venomverse, as I have on here, as being, fun, quality superhero storytelling that Marvel should be producing more of. And they'll just say stuff like, oh, he is a failed comic book creator. I guess he tried to get into the industry and couldn't. I can't imagine he'd be any worse than the losers running it right now. The artist on Squirrel Girl or the writer for Durka Miss Marvel. But yeah, it really is telling. Once again, and there are rumblings, and we've heard them for a little while here, and it is starting to slowly come down the pike that, Papa Disney has had enough of the shenanigans over at the House of Marvel and might be rearing it in. I mean, look, Disney didn't expect to be making a ton of money off of the actual sales of Marvel Comics. They bought it primarily as an IP farm so that they could create movies and TV shows and merchandise and T-shirts and action figures and amusement park rides and that sort of thing out of these characters and concepts. The problem is, though, if the books continue to suck for just years and years and years and years, eventually you're not even going to be able to muster up the interest in those other things. Eventually the brand will just be poisoned. And also, there's no reason, with as much interest in these characters as there is, that Marvel Comics, the comic book division, shouldn't at least be making a couple of bucks. No reason it should be hemorrhaging money when there's greater interest in these IPs than ever before. You know, I mean, again, DC is seeing sales go up. How about that, Marvel? You can actually see sales numbers go up. It isn't just start a book and then watch it slow heat death. Like it can, you can actually sell comic books. How about that? And again, it's very much a repeat of Gamergate, although I don't think it'll have quite the steam Gamergate did, because the comic fandom is smaller, and it just innate. I mean, they don't have the same determined level of autism as the gamers do. I mean, you know, gamers, by just the nature of their hobby, were down for a long slog and grind. Whereas,
it's not as big of an industry either. I mean, you know.
Yeah, and again, it's a smaller niche thing. I do think that it's going to continue. It's not going away anytime soon. As much as Marvel wants to make this look like, oh, it's just a bunch of evil misogynists and all that other stuff, it's not going away. They're not going to be able to sweep this under the rug. You know, Marvel's new unofficial name has become SJW Marvel. That's what just everybody refers to it as now. And they can they can bitch about that all they want, but that's a name they've earned, and they're doing nothing to shake it off. Well, going from one obsessive fandom to another, let's talk about my football for a little bit here. So Trump recently just kind of look. Trump came out and basically was like, all these you know, football owners and stuff that see their players, you know, kneel for the national anthem or sit for the national anthem ought to just fire them on the spot. And he said that if they did that, they would be insanely popular. That team would be insanely popular overnight. And he's right. Any one of these teams that comes down hard on it, oh, there'd be a ton of bitching in the media. But whatever team that is, jerseys of that team would sell out overnight in every store across the nation.
Well, we've got evidence of the obverse. The fact that the NFL is allowing this shit to go on has caused ratings to absolutely crater. They're at their lowest point in decades. Lowest point since the current Nielsen measuring system was put in place. It's not popular with the fans. It's popular with sports journalists, but it's not with fans. Like, what's his face? The mulatto who started the trend, Colin Kaepernick. The dude is not playing right now. He got fired from his team, and he can't get a job because of it. Because nobody wants to see his dumb ass.
Yeah, and I have to say, I'm pleasantly surprised with you football fans these past couple of years. I always thought that you were so obsessive about football that it could truly do no wrong in your eyes. And interestingly enough, Vox Day's kind of that way. Vox Day refuses to give up watching the NFL and actually bitches at people on his blog who call him cucky for it. He gets all uppity about it. But as we know,
the irony.
Yeah, as we've come to learn, Vox Day is a bit more sensitive than he lets on.
No, I mean, I was talking to some guys tonight. You know, they're not generally political, just kind of regular guys, but I mean, big sports fans. They're tired of it in general. Just all of this political nonsense that's in the sports journalism stuff. I mean, you know, and they're the ones bringing it up. That's the thing. I was just sitting there, you know, eating with them. They're the ones that were talking about it. Again, it goes back to the same thing of, you know, when you're watching sports, you don't want to be hearing about politics. You know, you watch sports to be distracted from the politics.
Yeah. And again, I didn't think the NFL fans had this level of self-respect in them. You guys exceeded my expectations. I thought you would continue to just eat shit from the NFL for the way Vox Day has. Let's call him out on it. Yeah, he'll bitch about it, but he'll make sure he watches every fucking game he can. But a lot of you said no, and you turned it off. And I've said that before. When this was really starting to heat up, I called out a lot of people and said, you got to turn it off. Because look, football is not for me. I'm not much of a sports ball guy in the first place. And if I was going to watch me some sports ball, it would probably be hockey. But as I said before, you know, like what you like, but have some self-respect about it. You know, yeah, I like Marvel comics. It doesn't mean I'm going to read Durka Miss Marvel. And likewise, okay, you like football. That's wonderful. But you shouldn't watch a game when they're shoving Black Lives Matter and feminist bullshit down your throat. You should just turn it off at that point. And a lot of them did, and good on them.
Well, I mean, one of the biggest things I think a lot of people see is that a lot of this protesting, it's based off of like false information. It's based off of lies. Oh, I'm going to protest the national anthem because not everybody doesn't have the same rights as I do. Okay, who doesn't have the same rights as you in this country? Who's being treated bad on a systemic level? Not just talking about your average jerk every once in a while. I mean, what government program, what government institution's treating you bad?
Yeah.
Oh, none of them? Okay, then you really have no reason to, disrespect the national anthem, do you? And, of course, again, along with that, disrespecting the soldiers who died or, went go through PTSD or go through being injured for the rest of their life, and their families and everyone who sacrificed, so that way you can look like a jerk and, take a knee, at the national anthem.
And, the other thing that occurred to me, even when this stuff was just starting to really first happen with that Kaepernick guy, there have been NFL players in the past who, for either political or religious reasons, did not feel comfortable doing the national anthem. And they just stayed in the locker room, traditionally. That's how that was handled. They didn't rub it in everyone's fucking face. And everyone was fine with it. No one bitched about it before then. So, he chose to make a spectacle out of it, and it bit him in the ass.
Well, I mean, again, on the one hand, it's like one of those things where it's like, okay, does he have the right to do it? Yes, obviously he has the right to do it. But is that something that everyone should be celebrating and, oh, it's wonderful? No. I mean, again, there's a difference between something being, legally illegal versus something just being stupid or inappropriate or wrong to do. And doing that, again, he has no reason, in my opinion, to be protesting here. He has no reason to be, especially not smart, to be trying to force this down everybody else's throat. But again, I don't even think that was a lot of it. I guess I'm a little bit more of a cynical person. I think a lot of this was just him trying to make, like you said, a spectacle out of himself to sell his jersey more, to get more attention, things like that. And it didn't work out for him.
Yeah. From what I understand, he was not a terrible player, but a mediocre and forgettable one. And, this was an attempt to boost his name. That's what I think it was. Because again, he's hardly the first person that's ever, had some sort of religious or political objection to doing the pledge, to doing the national anthem. I mean, he's the first person in the NFL, though, to make a big spectacle out of it. And it cost him. And yeah, he has the right to do it, and the NFL has the right to tell him to hit the unemployment line.
Yeah, or it's like that other case of Michael Sam. If you'll recall, back in, I think it was 2013, 2014, he became the first openly gay player to be drafted by the NHL. I mean, no, the NFL. I mean, I confuse these stupid sports ball leagues. But anyway, Michael Sam, you haven't heard from him lately. That's because he was such a shit player that the Rams cut him at the end of training camp. The next team he signed with, I forget the name of it, didn't even put him out on the field. And then afterwards, he had to go to Canada and sign with the Montreal Alouettes because he couldn't get a job in the NFL. And then he quit the Montreal Alouettes for mental health reasons. He was hyped up and he made big for no reason. Hyped up. He had no talent. He literally only got the attention he did because he happened to like anuses instead of vaginas.
Can I just say, though, that the fact that the first openly gay player played for the Rams is hilarious. I mean...
Well, I mean, that's the other thing, too, is that this stuff really isn't surprising anymore. It's not shocking when someone does something like this. It's seen for what it is, which is a publicity stunt. The world's sort of moved on. We've kind of recognized you're not brave. You're not, you're not shocking anybody. You're just doing what everyone expects you to do at this point, which is just looking for attention, which we all know you really want.
Well, I should add that, Michael Sam, he went for the Rams because he wasn't good enough for the Packers. The Packers got standards.
Oh, man. I can't make that stuff up. But yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised with the NFL fans saying enough's enough. I didn't think they had that in them. I didn't think they were ever going to let it go. Because there's few fandoms in this country more obsessive than the NFL fandom. But they had enough. They turned it off. And that's the thing. I mean, look, you can't. There's always going to be something in entertainment you don't like, and it's always going to be you can trace that company to another company and something. I'm not saying you got to, cut ties with anybody that does something that might offend you, but at the same time, there's got to be some self-respect about it. There's got to be, a line. At a certain point, they have to have crossed the line, and you got to just walk away from it, regardless how much you originally loved it.
Well, I think that line is when the company starts showing disdain for the fans of it, and they start like, we're going to be involved in this, but we really don't like the people who like this thing that we're involved in. That's the line where it's time to have, to cut it off. Like, it's like, okay, with the video games, when the game, people don't really like gamers, okay, time to leave that. Same thing for football. When these football players don't really like the football plans, they don't like the people that they're actually playing for, so to speak, the people who are paying them to have these $1 million and everything like that. Yeah, bye.
That's very much a common thread in all these kind of stories, from Gamergate to Diversity in Comics to the NFL thing. It's these companies just having disdain for the people that have made them rich, that have made them successful.
Well, again, it's the same thing with like the new Star Trek show that's coming out where they're talking about how, this is the first African-American lead ever. It's like, you're not even a fan of what you watch, because any casual Star Trek fan would tell you that that's not the case. And you don't even like the Star Trek fans at this point anymore. You don't care about what you're making. You don't care about the fans of it. So why should anyone tune in and bother to watch?
I found that to be first of all, Star Trek has had African-American main characters since the very beginning. The original series had Aurora, and, Next Gen had, Geordi, and, 2 if you count Worf. It was a black actor. And then obviously DS9 had a black captain. And they're sitting here like, oh, what to boldly go where, everyone's already been. It just became this insane joke, DS9 premiered in what, like 92 or something like that?
93.
93 DS9 premiered.
Again, it shows they just don't really like what they're not interested in the whatever universe or fandom that they're being a part of now. It was just like when William Shatner pissed off all the Star Trek fans by telling them to get a life, And of course, for a while there, you didn't hear a whole lot from William Shatner, especially when it came to Star Trek. It wasn't until he went back on that statement and kind of realized what he had said that finally kind of got back into it.
Yeah, I remember something else hilarious that William Shatner said about Star Trek. He was at like fan convention, and a fan of Arab descent came up to him and he asked, "Mr. Shatner, on the Enterprise in the future, there's Asian people, there's black people, there's people of all ethnicity. Why isn't there anyone from my ethnicity?" And to which Shatner, coyly said, "Well, my friend, you must understand that Star Trek is about the future," implying there wouldn't be any Arabs in the future.
That's fantastic. I remember a couple years ago, it was on one of these sites where one of these idiot actors was whining about, or one of these writers was whining like, there needs to be more Muslims in Star Trek and Star Wars. Like, first of all, Star Trek doesn't have any religious humans, much to, I think, the show's detriment. But also, Star Wars already has sand people, so what more do you want? Speaking of which, of people whining about ethnic problems, I saw earlier this week, and I meant to talk about it, and I just didn't get around to it. The actor who was in the Harold and Kumar movies, the Indian actor,
Kumar.
Okay, yeah. He is part of this documentary, and I can't remember the title. It's something like "What's Wrong with Apu" or something like that, where basically him and some other Indian actors that you've never heard of, they're all whining about how Apu, The Simpsons is racist because it has the character Apu in it. That's the premise of this big, long documentary. Now, look, The Simpsons is a shell of its former self and should have died well over a decade ago, at least. That said, though, especially when you look back at early Simpsons, you cannot overstate its cultural significance. You cannot overstate its influence, and you cannot overstate the brilliance of at least, I mean, what, seasons 3 through 8 or something like that. So for this nothing fucking actor, to be bombing around like, oh, it makes my pussy hurt that Apu is, and he's voiced by a white guy, that makes it doubly racist. So let's just take a look back at this actor's career for a second, shall we? Now, we all generally know him from the Harold and Kumar movies. Even if you've never seen them, you've probably heard of those movies. He also had a brief stint on House that no one remembers, even fans of the show. And before that,
he was in Superman Returns.
Yes, he was actually. Again, he's been in a bunch of stuff nobody fucking remembers because he doesn't leave a real impression. But before that, the real first thing I believe his first big break, as it were, was a little movie called Van Wilder. Now, Van Wilder is a pretty damn funny movie. It's the last of the truly funny college movies.
Write that down.
But he played a character. He played basically Van Wilder's Indian sidekick in this, whose name was Taj Mahal.
That shouldn't be that funny.
And was, I mean, just a complete and blatant sidekick of an Indian college student over here on a visa. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's a fun movie. It's one of my favorite comedies ever. And he was actually funny in it. That said, though, it's pretty fucking hypocritical for this guy to be running around about how The Simpsons makes his pussy hurt because it has a character named Apu in it, voiced by a white guy, when you owe the entirety of your career, pitiful though your career may be, on playing the most blatant, over-the-top Indian stereotype you could have written. Short of the character actually shitting on the street, you could not have made that more of an Indian stereotype.
Or having him work at a 7-Eleven and telling people he rang out, "Thank you, come again."
Oh, but he actually says that in Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle.
Yeah.
He actually
at a 7-Eleven.
You talk about your movies that didn't age well. The movie was mildly amusing when it came out, and it didn't deserve the fan service it got. And the sequel
you guys are not appreciating that movie for all it is. Do you know that it is a stealth attack on Islam? There are several points in that movie where Harold and Kumar go out of their way to disobey the Quran. For instance, there's the bit where he rides the leopard. The Quran specifically forbids Muslims from riding on leopards. Then there's a whole aspect of eating, a mother's meat that's boiled and it's whatever, the cheese on the hamburger. That offends Muslims as well. So there's some value to that terrible, stupid movie.
Well, when that movie came out, this is again shows you how much that guy owes his career to being in Van Wilder. The tagline in the commercial was starring the Asian guy from American Pie and the Indian guy from Van Wilder. That was the actual tagline for the trailer of Harold and Kumar.
Two fucking no-names who had to be identified by their race and the last movie they were in.
Yes. Which, at the time of Harold Kumar, American Pie was something like 6 or 7 years removed, or something like that.
Oh, yeah, people still call me the Italian guy from Howard the Duck, so I'm not gonna throw stones in the rock house, glass house.
But no,
I'm talking about a weird movie. Oh.
I just found it really telling that this, and again, the reason that guy is in this fucking documentary in the first place, I don't buy for a second that he's quote unquote always hated The Simpsons and always found it offensive. I think that this is just his latest attempt to put a shot in the arm of a pitiful ass D-list career. Much like the football player there. It's just attempting to ride these social currents to bolster a career.
He should have been like Tara Reid and starred in Sharknado.
That's the other interesting thing about Van Wilder. Last time Tara Reid would be hot. It was all downhill from there.
She was ever hot?
She was hot in that movie.
I don't know. For some reason, I always associate her with I associate her with the smell of booze and an unwashed pussy.
Yeah, that's That's probably indeed what she smells like, but
Booze, cigarettes, and
Saturday night on the
fish.
Bechtloff Show.
Yeah, booze, cigarettes, and trout.
that's why the sharks kept attacking her in that movie.
Booze, cigarette, and trout is every weekend in Canada.
That's what the entire nation of Canada smells like. That and a little bit of maple syrup.
I'm suddenly after thinking about Harold and Kumar, I'm suddenly craving a fucking crave case. I need to go to White Castle, and the closest one is about 4,000 miles away.
Crystal Burgers is better anyway than White Castle.
I've never been to White Castle, but then again, I'm not sure there's really any on the East Coast.
Oh, there's a whole bunch in New York and New Jersey. That's actually where I first saw them.
That's right. That's where the movie even takes place. But yeah, I've never been to one.
I heard they were absolutely terrible. Didn't Maddox do an article about how they only have like 2 millimeters worth of meat on their burgers?
Well, yeah, that's the secret is that you don't buy just one. You buy like 10. Because they're like the size of a nickel. But they taste so good. You can get like a crave case of like 30 of them.
Balls.
No, that's part of the appeal. It's fat, disgusting food, and you only eat it once in a while because you feel really bad afterwards, but it tastes good. The crave case is like, I think, $30. That's like 30 hamburgers. That can actually last you, about 2-3 days. Lunch, dinner, etc. It's that good, and they keep.
Yeah, no thanks. I was
fridge.
just at confession.
It's basically like Denny's. If it's not 3 in the morning and you're half drunk, you have no business being there.
No, it is. It was one of the handful of places in my neighborhood that was open past open 24 hours. So, shit, I just doxed myself, or at least I would have if I still lived there.
They're coming for you, Matt. Coming to find you.
Like I said, I like Crystals a lot better than White Castle. Of course, I hadn't eaten at Crystals in a long time. Last time I kind of ate it there with any type of consistency was when I was in college. So Crystal's kind of like the same thing, just slightly different. It's got those little burgers, though.
Never heard of Crystals.
Maybe it's a southern thing.
It's
Kind of like Ingles.
You ever been to Checkers?
Yeah, I like Checkers. Checkers is good.
Oh, God, Checkers.
They used to have a Cajun champ burger there. I loved when I was a kid.
I don't mind Checkers, but the last time I went to a Checkers, it gave me fucking at the Atlanta airport. It gave me really, really bad diarrhea.
Well, yeah, airport food in general. I mean,
That's why I don't like Subway. It's not fresh.
Yeah, it's fresh in the sense that it'll last you about 6 months due to all the preservatives in it.
Fresh in the sense that Tara Reid is fresh.
I used to like Quiznos, but there's none around here anymore.
I like Quiznos. They have one near me. It's part of a gas station.
Yeah, Quiznos is pretty good, but finding one is actually kind of a pain in the ass these days.
Yeah, they took a hit from the recession. They died down heavily. There was 3 in this county, and now there's none.
Well, I remember, yeah, they suddenly expanded everywhere in the span of like a year. There was even one up in my little college town, which of a population of 15,000 people. And then the next year, they were all gone.
Now, some of the best sub sandwiches are Jimmy John's, though. Those are really good.
Oh, those are pretty good, too. I prefer Potbellies, but, Jimmy John's is more widespread, so.
I've never been to Potbellies.
There's a Jimmy John's right in my area. I haven't been there yet, though.
You should check it out. It's good.
Yeah,
Jersey Mike's is okay.
Yeah, Potbellies is, I think, Midwestern, though I think they have a couple franchises in New York. I prefer Potbellies because it's the same price, but they give you more toppings. They also have really good shakes.
It's honestly shocking just how many fast food places you guys have down there in the States. Like, I thought we had a lot, but we only have like a dozen. You guys have, close to 100 different places.
Oh, yeah.
You know what my favorite fast food place is, bar none, is Popeyes.
Oh, Popeyes is great.
Oh man, if like I could only at close second is Wendy's, but if I could only save one fast food place, it'd be Popeyes.
Y'all must have good Popeyes. Popeyes where I go to, it seems like they're always garbage. I don't know.
Well, the secret of Popeyes, you got to go to one that's staffed mainly by white people. If it's in the ghetto, yeah, you'll get ghetto quality food. But
there's a lot of them in the ghetto.
Oh yeah, but the one one opened in Syracuse a couple years back, and that was perfect because it's in the mall, and it's the manager's an Indian, and it's entirely white people who are staffed there. So
when I was a kid, I lived in the town I lived in, Maryland, had like 3 Popeyes in it, so I ate there all the time as a kid. And then moved up to PA, and there was like none anywhere. It would be like the closest Popeyes was something like an hour away, you know? So it would always be a big deal if, like, I happen to be going by that area where the Popeyes was. I'm like, I know what I'm eating lunch that day. Hell yeah. And then finally, like a year ago, they opened a Popeyes in my county.
I know it's cliche, but I think my favorite restaurant would probably be Bojangles. I love Bojangles.
Never heard of that one either.
It's like big down here in the South. I mean, most like country singers, man, if they're going to do a publicity thing, they'll do it with Bojangles. Really good chicken. It's kind of like more. It's kind of like spicy chicken a little bit. I don't want to quite say Cajun style, but it's kind of similar to that. But
I remember when they opened the first Chick-fil-A in Canada a couple of years ago. They actually had a whole newspaper report. We still don't have any Chick-fil-A's though.
You're still calling it Chick-fil-A, dude? That joke is 3 years old.
There's nothing like an old joke. They're the best.
I used to think I hated Chick-fil-A as a kid because the only one that was down where I lived in Maryland was in the mall. And you know how restaurants can be when they're in the food court. They're usually the worst of the worst. So I always thought Chick-fil-A was terrible. And I moved up here and everyone was talking about how great it is. Finally, I went to it. I'm like, yeah, this is pretty damn good. This isn't like I remember at all.
I tell you, though, you always want Chick-fil-A on Sunday when you can't have it. It's like, oh, man, I wish I could have some Chick-fil-A. But
it's weird, too, because, like, where the Chick-fil-A is in my area, I only go around there either Saturday and Sunday. And Saturday, you can't get near the place. It's just so packed. And then Sunday, obviously, they're not open. But there's a bunch of restaurants over at that corner of the county, so I go there after church usually. And, I always drive by like, oh, I'll get a Chick-fil-A. And nope, guess I won't.
Well, that's the other thing is Chick-fil-A always seems to pick the worst spots for parking lots. Like, they just always have the worst locations.
Yeah, last time I stopped by a Chick-fil-A was about a year ago. I was, driving to Cincinnati to meet up with Davis here and Carl and Carl Ushanka and Aaron Clary. I stopped by Chick-fil-A in Indiana for lunch, and there's a fucking lot. This place was so poorly designed, the fucking drive-through cars were spilling out into the street. So I finally managed to maneuver my way into the one parking spot and get the one table inside the restaurant to actually eat there. I didn't regret the decision because it was damn good, but
they just opened some Mexican restaurant in my county, and I don't think it's even part of a chain. Because I mean, it's not super high end, but it's kind of high end. It's run by a bunch of Mexicans. It's really authentic. I went there yesterday and got something called like a Pino Loca or something. Basically, it's like pieces of steak and pieces of chicken and like pieces of vegetables and pieces of pineapples, all like sauteed in this like some sort of Mexican sauce or something. And then this whole thing is served in like half of a hollowed out pineapple that's been grilled. Oh man, that was fantastic.
God damn, yeah. That sounds fantastic. I really miss good Mexican. That's one of the few things I miss about the States. You cannot get Mexican anywhere in Europe. There's one place I order from that's sort of okay, but they're so fucking lazy that whenever you order from them, you basically have to reheat it in the microwave because that's how long it takes for them to actually deliver your order, even though it's literally up the street from me.
Yeah, Mexican food's great. It's only chefs will survive the deportations.
We need a bracero program for people who work in Mexican restaurants. We only allow men in, and we give them some sort of an aphrodisiac so they can't breed.
They'll start putting saltpeter in the shakes, though.
No worse than most of the soy that's in half our food.
Actually, since we're on the topic of fast food chains and revealing how disgusting we all are, one of my favorite chains is a place called Taco John's out in the Midwest. Well, actually, more in the mountain states, but they're expanding into Iowa now. Basically, it's sort of like a midway between Chipotle and Taco Bell, to the point where they don't even pretend that it's like, they don't even call it Mexican. They call it the fresh taste of West Mex. But it's beautiful. They've got these wonderful fattening, quesadillas and burritos and something called potato olays, which are just, tater tots with a little bit of spice on them. They taste great, and there's a million sauces, and it's also cheap. Well, it's Iowa. Everything is cheap, but fucking Taco John's is beautiful. I wish they've got some sort of philosophy against expanding into big cities for some reason, but I would absolutely love to have a Taco John's nearby.
Speaking of like really good food, if any of you are ever in Calgary, go to that. It's the strip club kind of in the northeast, nearest to the airport. Whatever, just ask around. Somebody will tell you the name of it.
Yeah, I'll get right on that.
They have the most amazing steak sandwich I've ever had, and it's cheap. Last time I was there, one of the strippers started yelling at me because I was ignoring her, and I said, "Get out of here, thought! I'm eating this delicious steak sandwich. I'm not here for you. I'm here for the fiddle."
Now leave us. Leave me in the sandwich.
Well, she was pissed too, and this is a fairly professional strip club. She was about 15 feet in the air and getting undressed while on the pole. So I guess she had cause to be angry that I was ignoring her athletic prowess, but good Lord, it's a good sandwich.
You can tell it's a slow news week, too.
Well, I'd rather...
I gave you that idea.
I would much rather talk about fast food restaurants than the news.
Well, you guys did know that the world was supposed to end today, right?
Yes, it was.
Well, the day's still young. Still got a few hours here on the East Coast.
You know what I was reading through earlier today? Since there's no new news, do you guys know that guy Goyland Green on Twitter?
Isn't Soylent Green people?
Goyland Green. He actually has, I think it's Mike Enoch for his avatar. Anyway, about 3 months.
I've heard of him. He's a real asshole.
Oh well, he pops on every couple of months and insults a bunch of people and then disappears again. But a few months ago, he actually wrote a piece for Return of Kings about those competing rallies between the alt-right and the alt-right. And, and pointed out that the alt-right had all the momentum and energy. And so I was rereading that and just think about how quickly the alt-right just parabolized itself straight into the ground. Oh man, this was heartbreaking. There's even this picture of Christopher Cantwell and Dickie Spencer mugging for the camera together. And it's just funny to read that piece. I retweeted it if any of you are interested.
I've been watching this show, The Orville, that Seth MacFarlane started. And it's a pretty good Star Trek parody. It's basically like Galaxy Quest, the TV show, in its tone of humor. Well, this past episode they did Thursday night the show thought it was a little smarter than it was, and I just bailed halfway through it. But something that was interesting about it, the one species, the one, I think it's like the third in command is Molochs or something they're called. Well, they're supposedly all male, right? And they don't really explain that. I just figure it's a joke. They're just a species that isn't sexually dimorphous, whatever. But then, he lays an egg and the egg hatches and it's female and they're all shocked and they're going to go and get it like corrective surgery to turn it male. So basically, as the show goes on, you come to find out that this race, they've all turned into one race, as every alien in these shows has, but they're basically a race of fags that turns all their females into males. Because they just are so disgusted by femininity. And I just thought to myself, I'm like, so it's the alt-right's dream. A homogenous culture of all men. He's
got a masculine clitoris.
It's Grindr Greg's utopia.
But ran off way from Gay Niggers in Outer Space, which actually is about that's a real movie. It's about how gay black people from outer space come to Earth, discover that there are women here, kill them all, and then lead the men into a new gay utopia. You take out the nigger part, they'll be just fine with the gay part. Speaking of which, should we talk about the latest the news of the week involving the anal right?
What they do now?
Oh no, there was an expose published earlier this week, New York Times. A Swedish Antifa by the name of Patrick Hermansson created a fake identity as Eric Hellberg, nothing suspicious about that name at all, and managed to infiltrate the alt-right in several very secret events with top secret vetting, such as the London Forum, the New York Forum, etc. And he managed to score interviews with Grinder Greg Johnson, Richard Fenther, and other major alt-right figures. Oh, and he doxed Greg Johnson because Greg Johnson has been super, meticulous about keeping his picture off the internet because he doesn't want people to know he's a diseased-looking faggot. This guy, Patrick Hermanson, secretly recorded an interview he did with Greg Johnson. And,
Luke, can we get a picture of Greg Johnson up? Since
you can find it on the New York Times, or there's like a bunch of them floating out.
Throw a link in the chat if you could.
But I didn't get to the twist here. The reason this guy, this Swedish Anto, is being able to get so much access so quickly, whereas I, can't, the alt-right threw me over the bus, is because Patrick Hermanson is a homosexual, and he had sex with Grinder Greg Johnson, this other idiot called Stedman, and possibly Richard Fenther as well.
Hey, in the art of war, it says to send your enemy send your enemy sluts and prostitutes to get information. So I guess Antifa read that and knew exactly what kind of sluts the alt-right wanted.
Yep, the alt-right's OPSEC was completely destroyed by one faggot who, because Grinder, Greg Johnson and his fellow homos, they care more about their cummies than the safety of their comrades. Common Filth was right. Common Filth was right again. The homosexuals are guided around by their dicks to a degree that straight men cannot even fathom. And now the entire movement is embarrassed once again because of these idiots.
And I mean that's saying something, because I know my dick's gotten me in more than a few bad situations in the past. Here's an interesting thought experiment, and I think this sort of shows you exactly what's wrong with the alt-right. Let's take good old TJ, the anal atheist, our good buddy TJ, who, as we all know, is one of the most vile, disgusting human beings walking the face of the earth. He actually challenges one of the tenets of my faith, and that's the idea that all human beings have inherent value. So in that regard, congratulations, TJ. You actually do cause a minor crisis of faith every time I look at you. But let's take TJ, and let's say we don't change any of his views except one. TJ becomes incredibly racially aware and is a huge white nationalist now. TJ. But let's say that happens, but he's still a militant, God-hating atheist. He still fantasizes about toddler butts and cannibalism, and he's still an ardent socialist. Do you think he's accepted with open arms?
Stop counter-signaling. He's good for the movement.
Yeah. Do you think he's accepted with open arms? Because I bet you he would be.
Just the number of people following him, of course he'd be welcome. He's popular, and that's all they care about. They bitch about democracy, and they're a complete product of democracy.
Look, he's a great way of reaching the normies, okay?
If I win the lottery, I'm going to pay some method actor to go out there, just be the most degenerate piece of garbage imaginable on YouTube. Like, just take TJ and Whitney, Wisconsin, combine them and crank that dial up to 11. And then after about 6 months of gaining notoriety like that, I want that actor to go full-on white nationalist to see if he's accepted.
Probably will be. I mean, Blair White has gotten very far on that formula.
I found an interesting alt-right blog recently. I sent a link to Luke. It is antonisthegaygod.blogspot.com. Then the link I sent to him is all about how the Knights Templar were martyr saints of male-on-male love. And listen, I have no idea whether the accusations of heresy, devil worship, and homosexuality are actually true or not, or if the French king just wanted to seize their property because they got rich after the Crusades. But, well, this guy thinks they're quite wonderful, and that male-on-male love is the way things need to be, because, thank goodness, it is not procreative. It does not reproduce, and that's why it's sacred. This is alt-right 101.
So which one of the bishops is this?
Back then, the bishops weren't infiltrated, and they actually dealt with it.
I'm sorry. I'm just busting your chops. No, I meant which one of the bishops now thinks that way.
Oh shit! This guy has a Twitter, Antinous Gay God. I gotta look this up. Latest archaeological finds: Hadrian built Antinopolis, where Antinous died in Greco-Roman Egypt. You know, with homosexuality. That's how they became great. The homosexuality.
Here's their page.
Oh my God! Oh, okay. Scroll down. Scroll down.
Hey there, sailor.
On this day.
Oh my God! They're riding the horse together.
I thought you bring that.
Apparently, that was the Templars' sigil, or their coat of arms, or whatever. Was two. There it is, right there. Two guys riding a horse. Is nothing pure?
No.
It's like the people who want to say that David and Jonathan had a sexual relationship.
I mean, the Templars were accused of sodomy, but that might have been politics. Who knows? But this guy thinks they're martyrs for sodomy.
They do a lot for the movement.
Buy yourself a gay oracle card, kids.
Oh,
At least they've given a name to what most everybody in America actually worships. It seems like everybody worships the god of sodomy.
I used to joke that white people had elevated their genitals to godlike status, but I was wrong. They've elevated their assholes to godlike status.
I mean, when you have prominent alt-right figures putting butt plugs in on live camera to piss off Muslims, apparently.
But enough about Gavin McGinnis.
because apparently eating a ham sandwich and drinking a beer wouldn't have done that, huh, Gavin? Had to go right for the butt plug. That's one of my favorite tweets I ever put out, where I took the picture of Gavin sticking a butt plug up his ass, and the picture of him kissing Milo, and then there's a picture of him in drag, and I just put under it like all three of those pictures. I'm like, Gavin McGinnis, real men don't read comic books or play video games. Also, Gavin McGinnis, these pictures.
You probably shouldn't put that butt plug image up, Luke. It probably will get us in trouble.
Yeah,
It's gone. I don't see it anywhere.
Oh, it's on Reddit. You can find it all over. Actually, Squiddo Shannon made it.
People put that video on XTube or something like that too.
Yeah, again, Squiddo Shannon made a hilarious image last year, making fun of the photoshopped Gavin's butt plugged ass onto a Pornhub screen, and I'm proud enough to come up with the title for the video: "Stupid hipster twink fucks himself with dildo."
He really does look like an aging twink.
Well, I love the part where he tried to pretend like it was really hard getting it up there, like his sphincter was so tight and he'd never done this before.
I saw him when he
they always pretend
when
to
he was
be a virgin.
mooning Copper Cab. I saw his asshole when he was mooning Copper Cab. A man who waxes his asshole does not have a virgin asshole. Just saying.
There was also the video he posted of himself during the RNC where he was streaking on a beach and showing off his hard cock to everyone.
Yeah, Republican National Convention. That's what we need. Good frickin' Lord. Yeah, and this is what I was saying a few weeks ago about these bloody beards that I see on all the soy boys out there. I mean, look at Pastor Tom's avatar here. That's a man's beard. It's well manicured, but it's masculine. Whereas all these soy boys, they're just one step away from being a villain in the Hunger Games. What the hell is going on with this?
Yeah, anytime I see like a mustache all waxed like that, I'm like, are you late to tie some lady to the train tracks?
Hey, and I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you meddling kids.
It's like, calm down with the mustache there, Wario.
I don't even really have anything against Gavin McGinnis. It's just, geez, buddy. Like, I don't want to talk about you, but you are just so worth talking about.
Well, no, that's like a thing. That's a bit of a beef that I have with him and Crowder. Like, on the one hand, they can say some good things from time to time, but they just do this stuff that is just so unnecessary and ridiculous and dumb. That's like, what's the point? Like, Crowder will take any chance that he can to dress up like a woman or to show off in underwear, all this kind of stuff. It's like, why?
Yeah,
why do you need to do that? Okay, you're outrageous, great, hilarious, wonderful. Who cares?
Yeah, Crowder's like Bugs Bunny when it comes to dressing like a woman.
Crowder's probably a cross-dresser. You'll probably find him in Grand Rapids gay bars on tranny night. I never liked that guy.
I think Crowder is a little bit more funny than Gavin.
Oh yeah, I mean, it can be a little bit more funny. I don't know. Just some of this stuff is just it's like ridiculous for ridiculous sake. I don't know. I mean, I guess he's more of a comedian, but
Crowder's a piece of shit in my opinion. I've never liked that guy.
Still, his video on AIDS was fantastic. Like with the cartoon, like with the little detective dog, where it's supposed to be like a kid show or something.
Oh man, did you see the hypocrisy of Jeff Holiday though afterwards?
No, I didn't.
You know, Jeff Holiday, the guy who talks so much about, we got to have truthfulness and all this stuff. And then when he like goes on there to debate this, basically, because he was debating the video that Crowder did, his whole thing essentially was, well, yeah, you're right. They kind of lied about it, but there were some good things that came from it because it really helped, homosexuals who had AIDS. And it's like, oh, okay, well, then I guess it's okay to lie about the wage gap myth too, right? It's okay to lie about, women, how often women get raped on a college campus because maybe some good will come from it, right? Mr. Truth seeker, I care about truth, except for, when it comes to homosexuals, then we can just throw truth out the door because it's better that they got some help for, a disease that they predominantly got via life choices.
I mean, I remember coming to age in the 90s and shit when they were, telling you in health classes like, oh, yeah, you're going to get AIDS. Like it's just like this insanely common thing. Like the odds of a heterosexual getting AIDS, taking drug use out of the equation are pretty damn slim. Yeah, it's possible. Lots of things are possible. It's possible I'm going to win the next Powerball drawing, but I'm not counting on it.
The fact that disease is still around in North America, like this is the easiest disease to prevent.
Like,
this is the easiest disease not to catch.
Just chill out on the heroin use and butt sex for a while.
Or use a damn condom. If you're going to have sodomy, at least use a condom, you idiot.
Okay, condoms work tremendously well against preventing HIV spread. But now we come to find out these faggots actually want to get it.
Condoms stop babies and they stop HIV, and they don't really do much else. That's about all they do. But only straight people use condoms, apparently. And Protestants.
Speaking of which, in the alt-right...
I'm sorry.
Speaking of which, to add to the alt-right...
Well, we Protestants are K-types. We like to breed responsibly.
Speaking of breeding responsibly, to add to the alt-right counter-signaling, Mexico actually has a lower AIDS rate than the U.S.
That doesn't surprise me. I mean, it's not even heterosexual promiscuity that spreads AIDS. I mean, again, they'll say this like, oh, you could fuck a girl in the pussy one time and get AIDS. Yeah, you could. You just probably not.
It's roughly at the same probability of getting abducted by aliens and having to deal with an anal probe.
I mean,
actually, I put the anal probe at a higher likelihood.
It could happen. Sure, lots of things could happen. All right,
I could be visited by 8-foot-tall blonde Aryan aliens in my bed tonight.
I think you've got a better chance of hitting somebody with your car than that. Like if you look at the statistics.
Didn't we already establish that gay space niggers were more likely?
I actually remember in health class being told, and it was a very conservative high school I went to, that you could it was technically possible to get a woman pregnant from pre-cum. And I'm like, it's one of the most.
You can sometimes get a woman pregnant just by looking at her seductively.
It's one of the most statistically unlikely things in the fucking world.
It happened on Scrubs.
3 little swimmers leak out of your dick, and one of them reaches the finish line. Get the hell out of here!
I remember reading a story about a basketball player who was conceived in such a fashion. This is in Catholic catechism class when I was a teenager. But even then, my brain was like, yeah, this is incredibly unlikely to happen.
You know what? If I knock up my wife from pre-cum, that kid is destined to exist, all right? That kid's like John Cotter or something. You gotta... clearly that kid needs to be born.
The reason that blog earlier, Antinous the Gay God, the reason this stood out to me so much was because it's not enough for homosexuals to say, okay, yeah, I'm into this thing. It's an evolutionary dead end, and it's not exactly healthy for me, and whatever. But whatever, I'm a weirdo. You know, I like ska music and I like butt sex. It's not enough for them just to say that. Okay, they can't admit they're weird and they're into something. It's probably not good for them, but they're gonna try and mitigate it. You know, like I like drinking whiskey a little bit too much, so I mitigate it. You know, I'm like, nah, I don't need another bottle right now. No, instead they have to take this errant behavior and turn it into a frickin' religion. You know, they need some Antinous, the gay god, and they have martyrs and saints for homosexuality. They need to turn it into some sort of political activism. It's not enough that they can just go sit in their basement and listen to ska music like the degenerates they are. No, they need to turn it into some sort of butt sex crusade. And you know what? And don't we just love them for it? Fabulous.
That's always been my larger issue with the whole LGBT movement in general, you know, again, is it's society's not just tolerance of homosexuality, it is the celebration of it, the love of it. Like, this is an ideal thing to be striving for. I mean, you know, now, again, regardless of, you know, religious beliefs or anything like that, in my opinion, society should view homosexuality sort of the same way that you view smoking. You know, don't do it around me, probably not the best thing for you. Okay, free country.
Hey, smoking boosts the IQ and protects you against radiation in the atmosphere.
Well, the simple
apparently butt sex increases your racial awareness. So.
Look at how racially aware Milo is.
Yeah, I mean, well, actually, he's another perfect example because I saw this tweet from Lee Stranahan, earlier today, on how Milo basically is a narcissistic, empty shell of a human being. Like right now, he's basically one of the things he's doing. He's spending tons of money on plastic surgery and having it billed to his new company, Milo Incorporated. He got liposuction and had his glutes enhanced with the fat that was sucked out. He's probably gonna have a nose job soon enough. He's changing his look again, and he's addicted to painkillers, Valium, and alcohol. And he's also spending beyond his wildest means because he always has to be the center of attention and throw big parties, you know?
He's only going to be pretty for another 15 years.
Milo is basically a bored hedonist. I don't have a tremendous amount of ill will towards him. If anything, I kind of pity the guy.
Yeah, I do pity him.
I've actually compared him to Richard Spencer in the sense that I think they're both very, very hollow, or they're both attention whores, and probably both like the cock. But with Milo, I think he's an attention whore because he's just a bored hedonist. The whole reason he fights political battles is because he likes to fuck with people. You know, he's like, in that regard, he's like Bugs Bunny. He's just a bored person that likes to fuck with people. And again, he just likes the attention. And, you know, there's a lot of potential I see in Milo. I kind of view him as sort of a modern Oscar Wilde, though. You know, in his day, he had to get famous by actually doing stuff. Milo's just a social media whore, essentially. But like Richard Spencer, I view as an attention whore because he's hollow inside. I don't really think that's completely true of Milo, but he's definitely, his lifestyle is definitely empty, and he's constantly trying to fill the void in him with it, and it's just not working.
Milo was perfectly civil with me when I met him, and I don't want to bash the guy. I have a bigger problem with his fan base.
Oh, yeah.
You know, this huge fan base of supposedly right-wing, supposedly traditional, but they need this...
Supposedly fabulous.
Yeah, they need this fabulous faggot at the head of their movement. Yeah, what...
Yeah, to give Milo the prominence that he's been given is ridiculous. Look, he's a funny guy, he's a charming guy, and...
I definitely appreciate the articles that he's written.
Yeah, I always thought he was an amusing
a good writer. Or whoever he hires to write for him is a good writer, at least, because I've heard that he's not writing any of his articles.
Well, I always thought the Milo phenomenon was an amusing sideshow, but it should have never been given more prominence than that.
Well, see, that was actually the trad cons using identity politics just in a way that people didn't really recognize. They were using identity politics the same way that the left was, saying, see, look, here's our gay guy, and he's conservative. We're not bigots. You guys are just idiots. That was what the trad cons are doing. That's why he rose to so much prominence, is because you can't say that we're, you know, the conservatives are bigoted racist if one of the head spokesperson for them is a gay guy who likes black people.
Well, what's the old saying? What do you call the black guy at the RNC, the keynote speaker?
Well, and the whole problem is identity politics from the very beginning. Identity politics is the idea that justice is meted out based upon who you are, not what you do. And that's the problem that we should all be fighting. But instead, all of these stupid monkeys are jumping onto the identity politics bandwagon. They're just going backwards.
Oh, it's worse than that. It's not who you are, it's what you are.
Yeah, you're right. It's not even something as, you know, at least with the privilege of nobles, there's certain expectations for a noble. You're going to have to go to war and defend the peasants to get that money every year. But yeah, it's who you are. And so
Yeah.
And so now we got all these people, we got all these young millennial kids that are swapping their gender because they want attention. You have heterosexual white girls who are becoming female-to-male transsexuals and getting into gay relationships because they need attention. They've been taught that only victims matter. Oh, okay, well, I have to become a victim by becoming a transsexual.
I have to say that God hates fags, but he hates feminists more t-shirt always made me laugh.
Well,
that was
listen,
a very
Milo
creative way to, bash the Westboro Baptist Church and feminism at the same time.
The problem is not Milo. Milo is a good writer, a funny guy, and does he have yes, he has a temptation. We all have our temptations. His is a little bit more obvious than yours or mine. The problem is the Milo phenomenon. I like Milo's writing. I like the work he's done. My big issue is the cult of celebrity, like the bathing in pig's blood. You know what, Pastor Tom, is that, specifically verboten for a Christian? I kind of think it is. I think that's in the realm of mortal sin, honestly.
Well, it's not.
I don't know that that's
you shouldn't do it.
I don't know if it's a moral sin. It's something you would expect, like, a 19-year-old girl to do who's studying feminist studies and doing it to get it. It's on the level of, like, those girls who do menstrual art or their vaginal yeast.
You should abstain from drinking the blood of animals when you know about it, and especially bathing in them. I mean, what's your point in doing that? What's the motivation in doing that? As far as mortal sins are concerned, again, Protestants don't make those types of distinctions. So
it's so vulgar that there's like so much the Bible didn't specifically forbid because they didn't know that they'd need to. Nowhere in the Bible says that it's inherently sinful to dress in a fursuit and then fling used diapers at cars in a parking lot. That was never specifically forbidden because they didn't think they needed to say it.
Well, it kind of falls under the do unto others.
Well, that's the thing. They want that done unto themselves.
Oh, wow. I'm trying to open that New York Times article, and they won't let me unless I buy a subscription.
But see, this is the thing about how stupid we are nowadays, to where, we can't put two and two together unless something is specifically spelled out. Well, then I guess it just, they don't have an opinion on it, so it's absolutely okay. It's not like we can look at some of the other things that are clear and sort of extrapolate that type of behavior would also be acceptable. But no, that's too hard.
We ban usury in the Bible. They never banned negative interest rates because that's just beyond retarded.
Well, yeah, it's basically, white people have this morality of, like, if it's allowed by the government, that makes it okay. That's why you see this, has mutated on the alt-right to where they obsess over black criminality and ignore, white sins. Like in the case of, did I talk about this on a prior show? Maybe I did. Anyway, the Icelandic government actually fell earlier this week, or was it last week? I forget. Because the prime minister was running cover for a pedophile. And this is Iceland, a country with no Jews and no minorities. It's the most homogenous white country in the world. And their prime minister was running cover for a pedophile. Iceland is also the chlamydia capital of the world, the abortion capital of the white world anyway. As Roosh wrote about in Bang Iceland, the culture there basically revolves around getting blackout drunk and having irresponsible, promiscuous sex with everyone. Icelandic is an immoral shithole. And they previously had a feminist dyke for a prime minister. But according to the identitarians, the alt-right, this is all okay because all that shit's legal,
It doesn't affect you. It's legal where I live.
Yeah, ignore the Prime Minister of Iceland running cover for a pedophile. Let's go back to talking about blacks holding up 7-Elevens to make our dicks feel bigger.
Remember how the alt-right was constantly on about, whites having higher IQs than blacks? And yes, statistically, that's a fact on average. Well, I mean, I recently saw, and I'm not even going to name him because I'm not trying to pick a fight with somebody, but somebody I've associated with a lot and still do, who then just went on Twitter and was like, I don't even care about IQ. I'd rather live next to a 90 IQ white person than a 115 IQ black person.
Yeah, and
and what exactly is it you care about anymore except the skin color?
Yeah, there's this whole thing of reversion to the mean, which nobody seems to understand properly. Reversion to the mean is a statistical artifact, and what it means is that if you see something really exceptional, whether it's a kid that's really tall, or if it's a football player that has a lot of really good footballs one year, it's usually a combination of talent plus luck. So the really tall person, they have tall genes, and they also have tall genes organized in such a manner that it creates an ideal tallness, or they got fed just the right thing at just the right age to maximize the tallness of their genes. And so these idiots love to point out that when you have two really high IQ black people, that their children probably aren't going to be as smart as them. Well, the same thing goes for white people. Okay, and that's just the normal regression. Now, those black kids, not as smart as their parents, probably, but they still have smart genes in them. All right, like they talk about regression to the mean like it's some sort of force of nature that forces everything back to the mean. But no, when high IQ blacks have children, the problem is right now, like the blacks are losing 1.5 IQ points per generation because all the idiots in the ghetto are breeding with all that Democrat money. And quite frankly, whites are no better. We've lost 15 IQ points in the past century because we are getting our lower classes, our scumbag underclass to outbreed the good whites the same way that the Democrats are doing to the blacks. We're all in the same boat here. How about we start making everybody better instead of obsessing over, well, I'm better in this manner. Oh, wait, well, that takes effort, doesn't it? And responsibility.
Regression to the mean doesn't exist. Regression to the mean does not exist. It's a made-up, fake junk science concept.
Well, it is a valid mathematical concept. It just doesn't mean what they think it means.
The alt-right invented the concept and blew it out of proportion, so they'd have a response to like when they advocated cutting immigration to the question, why don't we just have high IQ immigrants instead? It's completely made up.
I think it's a way of, when the fact that people who don't really have a whole lot going for them, it's a way to feel good about themselves. If you're a black person, you can feel good about yourself because you're part of the resistance. You were kept down by society. You're a victim and all this. And so you've done pretty good for yourself despite every bad thing that's happened to you. That's not your fault. From the white person perspective, you're part of the white race. This great and powerful and all smart, the greatest race in ever. So it really doesn't matter that you're a loser because you're part of this whiter, great race. So they have to look to something bigger to them or other people bigger than them because they don't have anything going for them. Maybe that's a little bit cynical. Maybe that's a little bit harsh, but
Yeah, the way they view this is almost as if regression to the mean is this mystical force that is perpetually keeping the black IQ low or something.
Let me put it this way. Imagine, your sports ball player and project a cone into the future where he's always getting better. Year by year, he gets better at playing sports ball. But within that improvement, there's a cone of good luck and bad luck. And so if he has really, really super good luck one year, you're going to have his innate skill plus his good luck means he breaks a world record. Now, because luck tends to average out, next year he is almost guaranteed to do worse. And it's not that he got less skilled, it's just that he didn't have this amazing run of luck like he did. And that's what regression to the mean means. So if you are super tall or super good looking or super intelligent, yes, you have the genes for that, plus they were just arranged in the perfect luck of the draw way. And so your kids probably aren't going to be quite as tall as you. They probably aren't going to be quite as smart or as good looking, but they will still have all those genes in them. Okay, it's that future improvement line with a cone of probability above and below it. Yeah, it's not a mystical force of nature. This is just basic mathematics. But I guess understanding basic mathematics is below the Ubermensch white race. Only stupid Jews understand math. Mathematics is Jewish. Relativity is a Jewish plot to undermine the Bible.
Honestly, I mean, dealing with a lot of the alt-right types and a lot of even the hyper trad types and autistic and all, it just gets exhausting after a while. Like, I can't imagine just seeing everything through the filter of political activism and shit like that. I mean, I made this joke on Twitter where it was, me saying, "Oh boy, Rick and Morty sure is funny," and then all my followers it promotes degeneracy, was probably written by Jews. And I honestly got responses to that about how it promotes degeneracy and was written by Jews. And I'm like, I mean, aside from the lack of self-awareness there, that you're doing exactly what I was joking about you doing. I mean, how do you go through life like that? Just fucking pissed off about everything all the time. Just unable to just enjoy something without filtering it through your damn, hyper-political view.
You remember when being a racist online was edgy and funny and actually worth doing? Now all the online racists are just bitter and mean-spirited and just cranky and unlikable people.
They've kind of become like feminists.
You become that which you oppose. Do not stare too long into that abyss.
Rick and Morty was written by Jews. I only get my opinions from Murdoch and Grinder Greg Johnson.
You become like that which you oppose if that is the only thing that you're doing. If you oppose something because you stand for something else, you will not become it. If you only oppose it for the sake of opposing it, then yes.
Well,
although I will say I might be losing my romance with Rick and Morty just because it's becoming so obvious to me that the creator is just such a gamma male that I don't know. There's still a lot I love about that show, but well, it's sort of like Game of Thrones. I don't know if I'm gonna. I haven't seen the last episode of this season, and I don't know if I'm gonna bother watching anything more of it.
Well, the alt-right basically is, they become very reactionary in the sense that they just react to what the left is doing. I mean, even the slogan that they adopted is indicative of this. You will not replace us. Well, first off, it sounds exactly like Shia LaBeouf's "He will not divide us." It even has the majority of the same words and the exact same number of syllables. And you wonder remember how well "He will not divide us" went over with the general public. Number two, it's entirely reactionary. There's nothing aspirational in it. It's on the same rhetorical level as the leftists calling themselves the resistance. We're just going to resist Trump. We're not going to offer anything positive. And if you want to succeed, you have to, offer something to aspire to, not just react against something that's bad. We saw this last year in the election. Trump's slogan, "Make America Great Again." It's not merely, if he ran on something like, "Fuck Obama" to that effect, he wouldn't have gotten anywhere. Yeah, something like that. You need something to aspire to. Whereas in contrast, Hillary Clinton's entire campaign phrasing was just like, "Donald Trump's a big meanie. He's racist, sexist, xenophobic." And shocker, that doesn't get butts to the polls.
Back in the 90s and the 80s, the religious right, partially because they allowed the media to frame them this way, and partially because of their own actions, became known as nothing other than those guys that bitch about every time you're having fun. Oh, you like this show? It's the devil. And that became sadly synonymous with Christianity in the cultural mind for a while. Now, feminism's downfall was they did that exact same thing. They became known as the people who want to piss on you having fun. And in record time, the alt-right and many corners of the trad, NRX, whatever the hell you want to call them, the alternative right in the broadest sense of the term, went from the guys having a good time, laughing and posting those dank memes, to the guys who want to piss on anybody having fun. And you can't have a movement that way because ultimately people want to enjoy their lives.
Well, and maybe what we should be
doing.
Life
is hard enough without somebody trying to piss on your good time all the time. Yeah, you stand against certain things that are wrong. I'm not saying you don't, but you have to be for something. You have to have some element of joy And
yeah, how about we provide an alternative? If all of this stuff is so terrible and degenerate, then how about we create an alternative that's better than what's being offered out there?
yeah, you can't just be running around bitching about everything. You know, I mean,
well, most of the people I've found that when they're complaining about something, they're complaining about the thing that they're not interested in. So, you know, it's like comics are degenerate. Always somebody who says that not interested in comics. You don't see somebody who liked comics who then will turn around and say comics are degenerate. You know, video games are degenerate. There's someone who does not play video games, someone who doesn't like it. It's always the thing that you're not interested in. But when it comes to your thing that you're interested in, well, then it's okay. You can make an exception.
See, and that's the difference between whether we're talking about the Christians getting angry at Harry Potter for completely the wrong reasons, or the alt-right getting all butthurt because they detected a little bit of feminism in Game of Thrones. Yeah, like I saw a really good analysis of Game of Thrones the other day, which was pointing out that the problem with Game of Thrones, the reason the ending sucks, and probably the reason that George R.R. Martin hasn't bothered writing an ending, is that the nihilistic hopelessness of that world kind of denies an ending. The only real ending you can do while maintaining those themes of nihilism and everybody's corrupt and broken is have the White Walkers win. To have anybody save the day undermines the foundational theme. And this guy was going on about how Martin misunderstands what Lord of the Rings is all about. And you can have an erudite opinion like that. Or as I point out with Harry Potter, my problem with it is the narcissism, not the magic. The magic isn't going to seduce your children into playing Dungeons and Dragons and engaging in sodomy and witchcraft. What's going to seduce them is the narcissism of Harry Potter being a special little snowflake that can do no wrong. You know, they have no real reason for being opposed to it, aside from it's not them. They're not into it. Is that Richard Spencer's boyfriend?
It's Dan Harmon, the creator of Rick and Morty, the fat, pathetic gamma male.
He kind of looks like the guy who makes the whatchamacallit Game of Thrones things.
That guy should start promoting freezies at 7-Eleven. Honestly, if they Game of Thrones actually has like some sort of tie-in product with freezies, I'll watch the last season.
that would be fantastic.
Yeah, speaking of which, you go back and read his comments on, this recent season of Rick and Morty. I only got into Rick and Morty recently. I was sick a few weeks ago, so I binge watched the first couple of seasons, and then I started watching the third season. The first two seasons are really fucking good. They're laugh out loud hilarious, but there's a serious tonal shift in the third season that I don't like. Both with the, they've got more female writers now, and they've introduced unnecessary cruelty towards beta male types, such as how Jerry is being treated in season 3. In seasons 1 and 2, he was, he's goofable, kind of dumb, but well-meaning dad. But then you got that unnecessary scene in episode 2 of season 3 where the wolf eats his unemployment check while Loser plays in the background. And then you've got obvious Harmon's influence with like increasingly depicting Rick as like this super smart gamma, is a super smart dude who's always ignored and he always saves the day, etc. Which is the gamma male conception of himself. And the most recent episode was just, I don't know. I can give it credit in the sense that the most recent episode was, I guess, an upgrade because it gave me the only really laugh out loud, scene in the entire season, which is when Morty is torturing the alien. But I don't know.
Listen to this quote.
I think the Pickle Rick episode was really good, and it was better than it had any right to be. But you're right. By and large, this season's been kind of weak. I did find the Citadel Rick episode to be pretty solid, but other than that, yeah.
Dan Harmon says, I was familiar going into the third season, having talked to Felicia Day, that any high-profile women get doxxed, they get harassed, they get threatened, they get slandered, and part of it is a testosterone-based subculture patting themselves on the back for trolling these women. Because to the extent that you can get a girl to shriek about a frog, you've proven girls are girly, there's no crime in assaulting her with a frog because it's all in the name of proving something. I think it's all disgusting. These knobs that want to protect the content they think they own and somehow combine that with their need to be proud of something they have, which is often only their race or gender, sick. It's offensive to me as someone who was born male and white. and still works way harder than them, that there's some white male fan out there trying to further some creepy agenda by protecting my work. I've made no bones about the fact that I loathe these people. It fucking sucks. And the only thing I can say is, if you're lucky enough to make a show that is really good, that people like, that means some bad people are going to like it too. You can't just insist that everybody who watches your show get their head on straight, and I'm speaking for myself. I don't want the show to have a political stance. But at the same time, individually, these people aren't politicians and they don't represent politics. They represent some shit that I probably believed when I was 15. End quote. And, you know, there's the bit of the Gamma mail right there, where he talks about the assholes and trolls on Twitter that harass people as if that's a testosterone-fueled subculture. No. That's those that are deficient in testosterone that just go around sniping. That's what you do, Dan Harmon. That's called projection. That's what you do.
Well, there's been scientific studies showing that actually, this was actually done a few years ago, increasing testosterone levels actually makes people calmer and more fair. It's estrogen that makes you act like a bitchy, out-of-control maniac. You can see this on, like, for example, you know, the first Star Trek reboot movie, which Kirk and Spock act like gay dudes slapping each other over who gets to be the belle of the ball at training night. There's no masculinity in that at all. That's what gay guys and women think masculinity is in this day and age. Maybe yelling in each other's faces all the time and acting, and being little bitchy, teenage boys.
Well, it's like in the Aliens franchise, where the first one was about a bunch of roughnecks that speak bluntly with one another and they insult each other, but they don't mean it, to the needless cruelty that all the characters show to one another in the later installments in it. And maybe
I've never been confused for a man.
Yeah, exactly. That's a loving joke between a couple of soldiers. All right, but it just turns into sadism, where in like the fourth one, a guy drops a knife into the leg of the crippled guy. Like, what the hell is that? And now maybe I'm thinking too deeply on this, but with Rick and Morty, this whole multiverse, you're all replaceable to me, seems like a very convenient excuse for selfish SJWs or selfish moderns, I should say, that use one another. They use one another for sex. They use one another for validation. And if there is no God and there's an infinite number of realities, then it doesn't really matter what you do to anybody. And so, yeah, Rick has a portal gun, so he can literally get a replacement Morty in Summer. But in a philosophical sense, if there are infinite realities, there's a reality where the person that I'm bullying is really cool. So it's okay that I'm bullying them. That's just the godless universe. It's okay when I use people.
Well, they've also started using it as a cheap way to get out of plot holes. Like in episode 6 of season 1, the show about the love potion. Rick and Morty use the portal gun to go to an alternate reality and set up shop there. I like that one because it actually had some emotional weight to it. Basically, the idea that Rick and Morty fucked things up so badly that there's no way they can recover their home universe. But then in the most recent episode, they go and do it again with the squirrel flashback. It's not funny this time around. It's not moving. It's not emotional. It's just dumb and lazy.
Well, and there was some major existential horror, especially in the first episode of the season, where they go back and visit that reality where the parents in Summer are the only normal humans remaining on the planet. And then they brutally slaughter them. It's this disposability of people, which has always been an element of the series, but it seems to be getting crueler. It seems to be reveling in it a bit more.
Well, it's a bit like the pointless, violence you see in movies these days. Where killing people has no weight aside from an increase in body count. That's why I really can't stand modern action movies like stuff like Guardians of the Galaxy, because you have all this bliff, mowing down of enemy soldiers or whatever, and there's no weight to it at all. In reality, in real life, it takes either a psychopath or a lot of mental conditioning to be able to take someone else's life, even if you're doing it for justifiable reasons.
Maybe that's just me getting older, but like Grand Theft Auto doesn't bother me because the whole game is so over the top. It's absolutely absurd. It doesn't bother me. But then you get these military shooters And honestly, some of those really bother me because no, you're not just wading through all these waves of enemies, taking them all out one by one. LOL. You know, they're not just disposable people. You know, that's, well, not in real life anyway, but that's how the video game treats it. And you know, some of that stuff is, you know, starting to, yeah, maybe it's just me getting older, but there's really something missing there. There's an opportunity that you're not taking advantage of.
Well, you know, Grand Theft Auto, you know, and Saints Row and games like that, they all start from the premise that your character is a shitbag. I mean, in Grand Theft Auto 3, your character is a fucking small-time hood who's working his way up through the mafia. Same thing in San Andreas. You're a black guy in the hood, and you're helping rebuild your gang to former glory. You know, the military shooters are, on the other hand, try to infuse some patriotism. You're a soldier, and this is your duty, and they're the enemy, and they're going to destroy. We need to mow them down.
Also, in Grand Theft Auto 3, at the end of the game, when you save your love interest, and she's babbling about how much she loves you for saving her life, there's a gunshot sound, and she shuts up, implying that your shitbag protagonist actually shot her because he never gave a shit about her. He was just trying to kill his ex-girlfriend who kidnapped her. That's all it was. He's still a shitbag. No lessons were learned. It's just a ridiculous, stupid game about dealing drugs and all this parody. So yeah, it's ridiculously dark. Whereas, yeah, these modern war shooters, they act like, yeah, these people are just disposable, you know, bags of meat for you to aim at.
Well, you know, that's why Spec Ops: The Line was so effective, because it played with that formula. You know, first by having you, turned out you spend most of the time killing fellow Americans, and then there's the scene with the, well, I shouldn't give it away, the scene at the gate. I won't give it away for those of you who played it, but it's very emotionally shocking if you haven't played the game. And then progressively the realization that at the end that your character basically was fucking things up more than he was helping.
And I'll stand by that game. It is very, very, I really like the plot of it. Anonymous Bosch has argued that it's a little bit gamma male, I'm superior, ooh, look at me, I'm turning the tropes of the games on its head, ooh, look at me, I'm stealing from the Heart of Darkness. Well, yes, it is. It's openly stealing from the Heart of Darkness. I still will really stand by that game. It is very dark. I really enjoy it. And it does have all that senseless killing, but that's kind of the point. It's like, geez, is this what? Why are you doing all this senseless killing?
Well, he has a point in that the whole environmentalism thing is kind of dated, but you know, I don't think anyone had done it to this extent in a video game before, so it's forgivable on that front.
Well, and I could see if there's some hipster twee playing this, going, "Oh man, those military guys are great." Shut up, you idiot! I appreciate it as a retired soldier that like I never deluded myself that I was going to be killing anybody else but the best people in whatever country I go to. You know, like if you're a soldier, you're a professional murderer is what you are. So go out there in the name of Jesus Christ, murder as effectively as you possibly can, because that's your duty. You know, Christ was okay with the Roman centurion after all. Just go do your job, buddy.
Well, there's different ethics for war versus ethics for, you know, non-war, peace times and governments and that kind of thing. I mean, sometimes it is necessary to take a life, and you have to distinguish between those things. And one of the results of living in a fallen world is sometimes you do have to go to war. Sometimes, you know, if you do not stop somebody through means of violence, then they're not going to be stopped.
Well, I think the thing with Spec Ops: The Line is that the protagonist simultaneously believes that he's on some sort of holy mission, and that none of the rules of war apply to him. You know, he is on this big self-invented quest to go do whatever. And at the same time, whatever he does to other people, including major war crimes, is perfectly acceptable because he's him and he's the video game protagonist. The same way the guy playing that Call of Duty clone is, oh, I'm just going to murder all these people because they're between me and the objective. There's no thoughts as to, you know, that these are human beings that I'm shooting. That it's, yeah, like a good soldier, you go out there and kill people, but you don't glorify in their deaths. You acknowledge that they were good people that you just killed.
Yeah, I mean, I would still draw a little bit of a distinction between, you know, the military shooters and some of that. Because, I mean, some of the things are, you know, in real life, because some of the military shooters are so ridiculous. They're so absurd. Like, I mean, you know, no one should take like Halo seriously. Like that's just so over the top. It's ridiculous that it's easy for me to just detach my brain and just be like, okay, these are just not real aliens. And that's the other thing is that in the game, they're not real people. They're digital creations. You're not actually killing anybody. You're not taking anybody's life. You're not ending them. These people were created for you to shoot them. That was their purpose in the game. That's why they were created by the developers. They were there for you to shoot them, to fulfill that purpose.
Is it just me, or do Grinder Greg and the protagonist from Spec Off the Line have the exact same look in their eyes?
So you're saying the protagonist in Spec Ops likes the cock?
Well, I'm saying he's definitely not one of the good guys.
Yeah, if you watch the videos with Grinder Greg, it's pretty obvious he's a pretty demented individual. Like, if I had to shake hands with him, I'd immediately run to the nearest bathroom and wash them.
Just a sec. Luke, why did you put up a picture of Zoe Quinn on the screen?
It's a character you're supposed to kill.
Zoe Quinn is a character you're supposed to kill?
No, that's not what anybody's saying here. No one's saying that at all.
Please don't demonetize this video, YouTube.
That looks like
the biscuits.
That looks like
biscuits, boys.
Nobody here condones that, not whatsoever. No one's condoning that. That was just a misunderstanding.
Looks like a dinosaur that someone took a gigantic shit on its head.
Kind of looks like a dinosaur with a big piece of spinach growing out of its back. Davis gets banned.
Kind of reminds me of that show, The Dinosaurs. Anyone ever watch that show?
Oh, I used to love that when I was a kid.
Oh, that was fun.
Not the mama.
Do you remember how that show ended?
Oh, that
yeah.
ending was absolutely...
No, how did it end? I don't remember.
Well, basically, it started with like they had caused some problem where like they accidentally wiped out the mating grounds of some bug, and this bug was supposed to eat this plant that grows like wildly in the spring. So to get rid of the plant, they sprayed weed killer all over the place, and it killed all the plants. And then they said, well, okay, how do you get plants to grow? You need rain. Where do you get rain? You get rain from clouds. So they triggered the volcanoes to erupt because they thought that would make clouds. and they all died in a nuclear winter from the sun being blotted out.
Yeah, the very last scene is them saying, yeah, we're going to make it. After all, dinosaurs have been on this earth for thousands, hundreds of millions of years. It's not like we're just going to disappear.
Yeah, they're just looking at their window at the snow piling up, and they're like, yeah, this will be all right. And then that's it. They're all dead.
This is fine.
It's like the ending of Seinfeld. Yeah, I posted on the Rouge V forum about Rick and Morty how if it turned out in the final episode of that show that all of the super science was actually just alcoholic hallucinations from an abusive piece of junk that was tearing his family apart because of his own problems, that would have just absolutely nailed it. That, no, Rick, you were never the hero. You were always the most pathetic of villains. And some people took issue with that. But, you know, I stand by that with the ending of Seinfeld. With Seinfeld is a great show. It is absolutely hilarious, you know, even if you hate Jews. And the ending of that is calling out the fact that the main characters on Seinfeld were terrible human beings. You know, it has that comeuppance at the end of it, you know, like dinosaurs. And I wish that Dan Harmon had the self-awareness to have the same sort of ending to his program.
Honestly,
comedy comes out of a place of suffering, and the best comic foil is somebody who is quite like either stupid or evil.
Well, I actually think that the best way to have ended Rick and Morty, and I think it may end up being the high point of the series, sadly, was the way season 2 ended. With Rick finally stepping up and sacrificing himself for the benefit of his family and ending up in the big intergalactic prison and stuff. Like, that pretty much would have been the best way to end that show.
Well, and just pointing again to liberal hypocrisy, wasn't the ending of season 2 basically Hillary getting elected and importing all of the illegal aliens and administering antidepressants to everybody 24/7 and promoting people who were worthless? Isn't this exactly what Dan Harmon supports politically?
Yeah, I mean, they went and killed the emotional resonance of season 2 of the season finale of season 2 is because with the first season of episode of season 3, where Rick was suddenly like, oh, that was part of Rick's plan all along. He had this master plan to destroy the Federation and all this because he's so smart and nobody listens to him and nobody respects him, but he's so smart and he saves the day, which is literally every gamma male fantasy ever conceived.
And you know what? That contradicts the fact that he scans for planets that are 99% like Earth or something like that. And he has to try out 3 different planets and they all fail. So was that part of his plan as well? Or was he actually not able to find another planet?
We got to get out of here. Everything's on a cob.
Although technically he didn't come up with I don't think he came up with the plan until after Jerry turned on him at that last minute. So he decided, okay, he's against me, so I'm just going to turn on him.
It's the Xanatos gambit, where I'm willing to buy that Rick is super, super smart at science and knows everything, but I'm not willing to bet that he can pull every single string and know exactly how they're going to interrogate him, and that on and on and on. I don't buy that he can predict what everybody is going to do.
So he's not light.
But it reminds me of
when he turned
season
himself
4.
in. I like when he turned himself in and he took that last shot at Jerry where he's like pretending to be Jerry on the phone. And he's like, I also want it on record that I like licking balls. Make sure that's on record.
It reminds me of season 4 of Torchwood, which is absolutely terrible and you shouldn't watch, but I unfortunately did, where the great villains were socialized medicine and government bureaucracy. It's like, isn't this exactly what you left-wing idiots support? Yeah, it's just so funny when liberals try and write a big villain. It's always Stalinism, even though they support Stalinism.
What liberals always amuse me is when they try to make a conservative a bad guy and they always fail and they always make him into a hero by accident.
Well, they want to make their protagonist alpha, even though their protagonist is a gamma. And so they create this big evil thing for them to go up against. And either the protagonist winds up being right, such as Frollo in Hunchback of Notre Dame, or the protagonist is actually a left-wing socialist. You know, it's guess what? Alpha males, right-wing liberals.
Well, think about this. Like, you know, Star Trek's biggest flaw was it always pushed that bullshit space communism. And what was one of the biggest villains in Star Trek was the Borg, the ultimate form of communism.
Well, and Ducat, who usually had the same kind of methodology of no such thing as bad targets, or bad tactics, only bad targets.
Well, that show didn't exist because this current show is the first time we have a black lead.
Oh, yeah.
So that show's just a dream you had.
It's also the first time we had a female lead, you know, meaning that Voyager was just this awful nightmare I had.
They actually said that. That just well, Star Trek finally has a black lead. I'm like, wow. you don't you've like seen like 2 episodes of like Next Gen one time.
The worst episodes of DS9 were the ones where Cisco was teleported or whatever, where he was a black science fiction writer writing about DS9, but they had to hide the fact that he was black because, oh, people can't deal with that in the 1950s. It was so deeply insulting to science fiction, which from the earliest days has been anti-racist in the positive sense. Take Johnny
But it's
Rico.
real! It's real!
Take Johnny Rico in Starship Troopers. Johnny Rico was not white. All right? And it's mentioned in an offhand comment because it doesn't freaking matter. Johnny Rico is a character. And Benjamin Sisko, yes, he's definitely black, okay? He's no Oreo. But it doesn't matter that he's black any more than it matters that I'm Italian. And I know I bring that up all the time, but I do that because I'm Italian and we just do that. You got to deal with it. But that's the thing, like, yeah, he like this. I don't know, I'm kind of mixed on the movie of Starship Troopers because it's interesting that they had such an unsympathetic, brainwashed, retard, pretty boy Richard Spencer of a protagonist. It's very ballsy to turn your protagonist into
Hey,
a
he liked girls
shithead.
though.
Yeah, I was gonna say he was all about the poon, so I don't think he's Richard Spencer.
Well, except he was madly in love with the girl that rejected him because she was high status, and completely blind to the woman madly in love with him because she didn't fit into his narcissistic life plan. He was he used like, look at that cow. He wants that stupid cow, but the cute little redhead, and I know Bechtloff will have some empathy for this. The cute little redhead that wants to roll in the hay with him, he rejects her and barely notices when she dies. He is such an unsympathetic cretin of a protagonist, which is an interesting choice to make for a filmmaker. You know, it's kind of like I'll be honest. RoboCop I found very off-putting as well for similar reasons.
Well, I remember about Starship Troopers is that my dad dragged me to it when I was like 7, I think, and it was the first time in movies I ever saw tits, which was fucking awesome. So.
Yeah, but they were shaggy, cold shower tits.
The first time I ever saw tits in a movie was Total Recall.
Yeah,
that was when there was 3 of them, so that was a high bar.
And you didn't become a furry.
That's a high. You talk about unrealistic body standards for women.
I just like that scene in Starship Troopers where they meet the sergeant for the first time, where he's like, "I just have one rule: everybody fights, no one quits. If you don't do your job, I'll shoot you myself." It's like, all right, that tells you everything you need to know about that guy.
I like when the recruiter is like, "Oh, mobile infantry made me the man I am today," and he's got like a hook hand.
You know, that scene's in the book, and later on, Rico meets him after hours, after he's signed up, and the guy has fully functional cybernetic legs. And he says, "You did sign up? I'm so proud. Yeah, I do that to freak out the recruits. But the society takes care of its citizens."
Funny you mentioned Total Recall, Bechtloff. You know, the first time we saw tits were both in movies by the same director, so. Yeah, Paul Verhoeven's pretty good. Maybe a bit too much for the nudity these days. He's got a really good movie from 10 years ago called Black Book, this Dutch production about World War II, which is interesting because it doesn't depict either side as being wholly good or wholly evil. Like the Nazis actually have some positive qualities to them, and the resistance that is the focus of the story are kind of shitbags themselves. So I could do about the shots of like a fat dude's dick, but it's a pretty good movie with a lot of good action and a good plot. So.
You know what movie has tons of nudity and sex all through it, but it's actually a fantastic movie? It also is with also Denise Richards is Wild Things. Like, I mean, that movie's got tons of fucking whack material in it, but it's actually a really interesting murder mystery movie. And Denise Richards does get all kinds of naked in it.
I expect you all in church tomorrow.
Yeah, Wild Things is actually pretty damn good. I mean, I only rented it when I was in high school because I heard Denise Richards was naked in it, and I'm like, well, that sounds like a good afternoon right there. But lo and behold, I got a good movie as part of the deal.
Why'd you put up where the wild things are?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
What?
yeah, I don't. It's,
Not sure if I would want to see nudity in that movie, but
yeah, it's,
We're not. This is not an alt-right stream.
oh look, the big Lucas traded places with the big KK now.
fucking. You might as well put Chris Hansen on the screen too while you're at it. Oh.
Would you just take a seat, Bechtloff? Just take a seat.
Just take a seat over here. Oh. All right. Well, I think I'm going to wrap this up. Anybody got any closing thoughts?
Free Kevin. Oh wait, he's already free. Never mind.
Well, until further notice, the movie theater is dead to me.
Why did they go to the assigned seating thing?
Oh no, not that. I went to go see Ninjago last night.
Oh.
And all movies suck right now, or everyone else knows that. But I saw Mother and Ninjago in the week, and I've now convinced myself that movies are completely irrelevant.
Oh my god! Damn, are you okay?
Yeah, no, maybe it's because you saw Mother and Ninjago.
No, I'm saying, like, you poor thing. You sat through both those?
Ninjago was such a chore. I mean, even kids can't. I can't imagine children enjoying this movie.
I mean, I like kids' movies when they're well done, I mean, but like, I like the Lego movie. I thought it was a really cute movie, and I've heard
that was a good movie. This is not. It's like the mood is like trying to watch the Avengers movies in chronological order, except you're not watching good versions of them.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, and I've heard Mother is an absolute like we should all praise God for not destroying the species after that movie was made.
Isn't it some sort of really stupid metaphor where she's like Earth and like the Bible is happening in her house or something like that?
According to Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah, there's like 3 different kind of metaphors happening in the movie that I saw, and I still don't know what the movie's about.
Well, it's by the same person who did Black Swan, and that was a garbage movie.
Mm.
Yeah, you poor thing. Let's all pray for Luke's mental state.
No, it just
make sure he doesn't.
My concern is that the theater is just it's now officially happening that the theater is dead. I mean, it's just kind of sad.
Luke's just at home tonight with a bottle of scotch. Like, what's the point? It's all going to be dust one day.
Hey, Luke, I sent you a picture of a naked wild thing all covered with fur to cheer you up.
I mean, this little guy.
Oh.
Space Dog says, "Give biscuits, goy."
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for listening. Thank you all for being on. Luke, Pastor Tom, Matt Davis, always welcome on here.
Thanks for having me on.
Tomorrow, at some point, and I haven't decided exactly when, I'm going to be doing the stream where I review both versions of Stephen King's It. That's a sponsored live stream. If you want to sponsor a live stream, get in touch with me. I've kind of cemented what I think is a fair rate, and it's going to be roughly $10 an hour. The hour live stream plus whatever show prep is involved. That rate, however, is flexible. It depends on exactly what is entailed in research or whatever. But that's kind of a rough rate that I've sort of cemented. I think that's fair. If you absolutely have to have Luke involved in the stream, that's going to cost a little extra because I want to give him a few bucks. Also, if you enjoy the stream, enjoy the show, enjoy my content, you can check out the tip jar down below where you can send me some motherfucking shekels. And I could really use them this month. Bit of a tight month. Had my big car insurance payment for the 6 months. And, but, tips of any size are greatly appreciated anytime. So, and also, I mentioned this during the week. I'll mention it again. Sometime next month, the Saturday show is coming to an end. I will have a part-time job where I will likely be working weekends. So basically the big stream of the week will be moved to another time. I'm leaning towards Wednesday, but I haven't made any strong decisions there. We'll see. If it is Wednesday, it would probably start at 9 o'clock because, I likes me some Arrow. But yeah, I haven't decided. We'll see where that's going. But likely sometime in October, the Saturday stream will come to an end and then be replaced by another night.
All good things must come to an end.
Yep.
Or we.
By the way, Bechtloff, you were going robot there for a second, but then it just stopped suddenly and went back to normal.
Oh, well, how about that?
He kind of glitches out every once in a while.
I am Beckbot 2000. Deaf
I'm just
to
going
the
to do the whole
Amish.
stream now. Just going to do the whole
to the Amish. Uplift redheads.
Give shekels.
Give shekels.
Give
yes.
shekels.
Send me some shekels. I need some shekels there, Goy. But yeah, that's all we got for tonight. I want to thank you all for listening. Thanks to my wonderful guest this evening. And, go to church in the morning. We spent too much time talking about dicks and boobs and stuff tonight. I think y'all need to
fattening fast food.
Yeah, and fattening fast food. Since we covered both lust and gluttony tonight, I think you all need to go to church tomorrow. But yeah, that's all we got for tonight, folks. Thanks for listening. Bechtloff out.